All right, so the video for today, the topic is going to be the First Amendment. And I want to ask you to keep in mind while we go through this topic, do you think that the First Amendment applies to employees of the government? Meaning, when you become an employee of the government, do you forgo your First Amendment right from that day forward? That's the question I want to ask you. So the reason that we're having this discussion today is because an article I saw in the Columbus Dispatch, and it says a new Columbus public safety policy regulates workers' social media posts and personal emails. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to go through the article a little bit, and then I'm going to pull up the division directives, which can be found online through a simple Google search. Then we're going to talk about possible implications and kind of my opinion on this. So on to the article. She does a good job of explaining the policy. It says a new external communication policy for Columbus Department of Public Safety employees could make them subject to disciplinary actions for social media posts and even personal emails and communications that the city deems inappropriate. That should be a red flag to just about everybody right there, that the city deems inappropriate. That's very broad, and that could mean a lot of things. Regardless, it says the policy, which applies to all public safety employees, including city police officers, firefighters, paramedics, dispatchers, licensed section, and Ways and Measures employees, goes into effect with the department on April the 4th. The policy is being called overly broad by a First Amendment attorney and union officials, who also say it could have unintended consequences, including a chilling effect on efforts to connect with the community. A little excerpt from the policy. It's important for department employees to remember their external communications, even viewed as personal, may reflect on the city, the policy reads. Let's see, she narrowed down some bullet points for everybody. The policy, among other things, allows for private email communications between public safety employees and a third party that are off duty and not job related to be used for disciplinary purposes. So if a police officer writes an email to a firefighter and they're both off duty, that could be used for disciplinary purposes. Or it even says to a third party, like if a police officer sends an email to, I don't know, a fast food worker, and they're talking about painting the steps on their deck. I don't know. Somehow that conversation, if the police officer says something wrong, he could be punished under this new policy. It bars public safety employees from identifying their employer on social media and linking their social media accounts with actual physical link to the city or department for which they are working, including hashtags. I don't believe this is 100% accurate, this statement right here. Barring public safety employees from identifying their employer on social media. I don't believe that is true. I've read the policy. I think that's a best practice. If you're a police officer or a firefighter or an employee of a public safety government entity, I wouldn't put your employer on your social media. Everybody who knows you is already going to know. It's just a best practice. Now, this part where you're posting links and stuff to the actual city that you work for, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. It also prohibits employees from using department logo, seal, insignia, or equipment. Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. Let's see. Now it gets down. This is a guy named Mark Weaver. He's a Columbus attorney who's an expert on the First Amendment. He actually defends cities and counties from lawsuits and said that after reading the public safety policy, he believes it borders on punitive and oversteps the bounds to what can legally be limited by employers. Says, I doubt members of city council and the mayor are complying with this policy in their social media and emails. Taxpayers will pay a small fortune to defend it in court and will likely lose, he predicted. So I've got the policy here. Let me move this back over. And I just want to talk a little bit about the first paragraph and kind of expand on it. And then we're going to get into my opinion. So it says that the purpose of the external communication and civic engagement policy is to maintain and reinforce the city of Columbus's credibility and reputation for respectful treatment of citizens, employees, and of public officials. It goes on down the line to give a bunch of examples and a bunch of cases where if you say certain things, you might be in violation of policy. And down here under application, it talks about what items they might use against an employee. That's why the attorney Mark Weaver was saying that this borders on punitive. Because when I read a policy like this, it looks like they're trying to scare employees from talking. And if you do talk, then they want to punish you for criticizing the government. That one of the main points when you go down through here and examples that they bring up is that by criticizing public officials, you're, damaging the credibility and reputation of a public official. Now, the question that I have, and it's also the same question that Mark Weaver had, is are the public officials going to be held to the same standard? Because they have to realize that their words also have an effect on the reputation of the city to which they're allegedly representing. So let's just say hypothetically that a public official came out and said that the police department that serves under him has a long, deeply rooted history of racism, and that it's important that a large number of police officers leave that department, to the extent that he's even going to offer to pay them a large cash bonus to get them to leave because he needs to get rid of the racist. Is that a statement that would damage the credibility and reputation of employees of the city, meaning the police officers? If you were to go out and make those kind of statements regularly, accusing the police officers of your city of being racist and racially targeting people and going after people in underserved communities and not treating them fairly, could those statements be viewed as something that damages the credibility and reputation of city employees? I strongly believe the answer to that question is yes. There was something else I saw down here that I thought was kind of funny. Where is it at? It was towards the bottom of one of the pages. Oh, here it is. I'll start here with be accurate. Department employees are strictly prohibited from posting any information or rumors which a reasonable person would believe to be false. That one's really loaded because in the world that we live in 2022, it's hard to know what is true and what's not true. I want to highlight the case of Hunter Biden's laptop. That story broke, October of 2020? Is that when the election was? The New York Post, I believe, had this story that the son of the now sitting president had taken his laptop to a repair shop and just left it there and never paid for the repairs. So the person who did the repairs went to the media with this laptop, and it had a lot of pictures of the president's son smoking crack, doing cocaine with prostitutes, bragging about doing things with his dad. And, there was a lot of information on this laptop. And what happened was there was a concerted effort by the national corporate media in this country to say that's not true. There were politicians out there saying this is nothing more than false accusations and a piece of Russian propaganda. So if you tweeted about that, your tweet was deleted. You could get banned from Twitter for tweeting about that story. The New York Post had its entire Twitter account, I think, blocked for a period of time because they were posting a story about this laptop. That was something that was information or rumors which a reasonable person would know to be false. At the time, the media and all these people nationally, publicly across the country were saying that is false information. I'm a reasonable person, and I'm telling you that's not true. So anybody who was posting that stuff was being punished. So this policy is saying you must be accurate. Department employees are strictly prohibited from posting any information, rumors, which a reasonable person would know to be false. Now, if a public safety employee hears something or sees something that he believes to be true, and he shares that with the public on his personal time, should the city be able to punish him for something like that? The answer is no, they should not. But the problem is, the idea of truth has become subjective in our society. And I don't agree with that. Now, the thing that I want to close with today is, what is the First Amendment? What does it say and what does it mean? The First Amendment was the very first amendment to the Constitution of the United States, and it says two things. It guarantees that you have the right to freely express your religion, that the government can't tell you what religion you're going to practice. That part of the First Amendment has been distorted over the years and changed, but regardless, the government cannot tell you that you have to celebrate Christmas. That's what the First Amendment says. The second part of the First Amendment is that the government cannot stop you from criticizing the government. Because at the time that it was written, we had just finished the Revolutionary War. And one of the reasons the Revolutionary War started was disputes with the King of England. And prior to that, if you went out in the public square and you were criticizing the king, you would be jailed. And the founding fathers wanted to create a nation where citizens of the nation could go out in public and criticize government officials and policies. Now, if you're a police officer or a firefighter, but you're also a citizen of the city where you work, does that mean that you give up the right to criticize public officials in the jurisdiction where you reside? No. I don't believe that a city has the authority to override the Constitution of the United States in that case. This policy, in a large part, was written in order to prevent employees from criticizing the very public officials that are out there criticizing those employees. So when it comes to that, I'm going to stand firm and say that the First Amendment to the Constitution protects every citizen's right to criticize public officials. And this policy does not have the authority to override that. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this topic. Let me know in the comments below. Until then, thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.